doing this. I've already spoken to Alyssa twice. I've also interviewed Jono Alderson. So one of the things that I'm going to do throughout today's interview, I've read several of your posts, of course, Alyssa's and Jono's. So some of the questions I'm going to ask are specifically about your articles. Some of the questions I'm going to ask are about the interviews that I've done with them. I'm going to try to pull it all together because my next write-up will be an amalgamation of what I've learned from all of you wonderful, much smarter than me people on this topic. So hopefully we'll go from there. To start, I want to talk about your particular focus on AI and search. So you've done some of the earliest work quantifying how AI overviews ChatGPT, specifically, I guess, answers impact clicks and visibility. And based on what you've seen, what's actually changing in how people like find information? And if it helps like to narrow what I'm asking here, this question is coming specifically from how AI overviews are impacting click-through rate and the case study that you wrote, the 6 learnings.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of different ways that, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that AI is affecting how people search, but kind of drilling down into AI overviews in ChatGPT, I think with AI overviews, there's just friction within the search results. And that's whether we're looking at a top of funnel query and having an AI overview that, can be helpful from a user perspective of, I just want to find the information. I just want a definition. I just want to know what something
Quick,
means.
like give it to me
Yeah,
quick. Yeah.
which is great. And that's great for Google's perspective of being able to provide that information for the user. But then when we're looking at the brand perspective of traditionally wanting the clicks, wanting
The
sessions,
click
wanting
through.
on,
Like, I want to
yes,
bring you to me. Yeah.
that's where there's some, friction where we've been talking about how much do clicks matter, how much do sessions and engagement rate for different queries matter in the future. So I think that's one way that there's just friction that is happening in the search results. And it's been a common theme over the past 10 years, especially with the initially featured snippets. People were very much questioning how those would impact everything. And then, just kind of moving into zero click. This is just another phase of that. But then there's ChatGPT, which I think in any research that we've seen so far is just kind of being additive to how people are searching. It's not really a substitute overall, but they're just able to find some of this information again more quickly. Brands aren't seeing those metrics, not seeing the measurement within that platform as it is right now. But then what we've seen is that whenever they do, click through, there is the added engagement. So that's where we're seeing some value. There's some friction, but there's also some value after
So
that process.
is it fair to say that the people who click through are now more highly qualified? Because if they get through the added friction, as you're calling it, it's because by the time they get there, they're much more educated on
Mhm.
what they're looking for, and because everything that they needed to learn about whatever they're looking for, whether it's content or a product or whatever, they were able to find in
Mhm.
ChatGPT or the AI overviews or whatever. And so by the time they get to a brand's landing page, it's because they're ready to make a decision or find something that wasn't available in the AI overviews. And therefore they're further down the decision funnel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about any time that we want to purchase something or just research the buying process, and typically how many tabs that we would historically have open of looking through all of these different features, specifications, technical considerations of whatever we're looking at. But Now with ChatGPT, of course, it's just in one platform, one conversation.
Yeah.
So there is the benefit of that from, again, the user perspective of researching. And ChatGPT also doesn't provide typically an actual, you've researched this much, this is the right product for you,
Ooh,
and
that's a
you
new
have your,
feature request. Can you just reach out to the folks at OpenAI and say, hey,
yeah,
I would like you to tell me when I've done enough research, please? And you're good. You're 80% of the way there. Here's a few more things you should look at.
yeah, I'll ask our customer rep
Get
immediately
on
after
that.
this. Yeah. And
Wouldn't
so
that be
since there's
great?
not
Like,
the 10 blue links or, just one blue link that it's saying, hey, click here for to purchase, there's the added friction of just either going into the sources and clicking into the one that is most applicable to you, or whatever that process looks like. Because these are users that are clicking directly through ChatGPT. We don't even have all of the information of users that find the brand in the conversation, then go do a organic web search. That is much, there's much more data
we
to
don't
be
know the path. We don't know the happy
analyzed.
path.
Yes.
And some people
So
are going to Reddit, and some people are going to ChatGPT, some people are looking at AI overviews.
a lot of different touch points that can happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
That just wasn't as easy in the past or
So
possible.
you recently wrote Footers Are Back like it's 2003. And I just want to point out that you really missed an opportunity. I feel like you don't listen to Prince, but whatever, we're going to skip right over that. But because AI engines are scraping differently now. So what does that tell us about how we need to technically structure websites today differently than in the past, like year, 2, 3 years?
I don't know if it's structuring anything differently because it's still, I would still recommend, focusing on
So
your audience
it's the
personas.
same recommendations that we made for SEO for AI. It's like
I think it's being
everything
like
old is new again.
a little bit, and it's just being mindful with those elements that
Please
we're
tell me we don't
publishing.
have to keyword stuff again.
No, we're not keyword stuffing. And that was the goal of the footer test. It's not to say, hey, everybody, optimize your footers with all of these keywords that you want to rank on Google for. It's just to, there are repeatable sections on sites that are visible on all pages, whether it's a
Like this.
footer, whether it's the about section on press releases that you have on your own site. These are elements that are being picked up from ChatGPT and from LLMs. So just being mindful with what you have like repeated across the site. And, of course, we're still user first, but we're not trying to rank organically for in the footer test enterprise clients. We're just trying to be referenced for those in LLMs, and it did work.
So this isn't actually a question I have written down, but you made me think of this based on that answer. So the reason it stopped working, at least for a period of time with Google, is because they have people actively tweaking their algorithms,
Hmm.
frankly, working against SEOers because they're like, we know what you're doing and you're trying to trick us. And we want Google to work for users. We
Hmm.
don't want Google to work for people who are trying to trick the system. OpenAI is not, at least to my knowledge, working on an algorithm to avoid that today.
Yeah.
That is not their focus.
Yeah, it may be in the background of what their, potential end goal is, but I also think that this is why that they are primarily using Google's index for the search capability because they know like what their strengths are and what Google's strengths are.
So
Google's
as
strengths is of
long as
course
it's
the
tied, as long as AI search optimization, whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or anything, is tied to Google's, eh, sure, and all the others, yay Bing, then the the work that they're doing to keep it pure still matters
yeah, of
a
course.
little.
I mean, And there are different things that we've seen in tracking citations. Like ChatGPT is still referencing a lot of listicle content of just these are the best providers for X service, X product, which a lot of these that we're seeing aren't really ranking that well in Google SERPs. So there still is the kind of gray area of what
Okay.
is best for like ranking organically. And I think it just depends on an industry by industry basis. We run different correlation analyses for our clients to see in the SaaS space, maybe this type of content really benefits your visibility versus in the finance space, it's this type of content on this type of site. So I think it definitely depends, which is, of course, the most SEO answer of all
You
time.
keep saying things that make me go off script. Are you an experimenter by background, like A/B testing?
Not traditionally, but it's definitely just been a part of my role in the past 2 years that I've really enjoyed leaning in on.
Okay. Because like you say things that are like, correlation, and then you talk about A/B tests, and I'm like, do you feel that the tension between correlation and causation and
Of
trying to do
course.
both? It would be
Of
very challenging. I mean, I know a lot of people who work in both, and and constantly saying correlation is not causation, but here's the really cool correlations we found. So
yes.
anyway, it's
But
fascinating to do both
yeah,
and
it
be
is. And
awesome.
especially in the place that the research and the industry is in right now, it's, like it's very hard to get anything that is statistically significant with the lack of data that is out there. I mean, there's a lot, but there's also a lot that's missing. Search volume being one of the key. We don't know how often these are being searched, but I think we do have a very much enough research out there to at least provide directional recommendations and provide some of those directional correlations and also understand why correlations are different or everything is different on an industry by industry basis.
Right. Like Tylenol doesn't cause autism, for example.
Right.
Um, okay, so you've shown that brand mentions in trusted publications and high authority sources can boost AI answer visibility. Is this like the new version of link building, or is it something else entirely that I didn't get? Totally
I
possible.
think I think we're referring to it more as brand building than just link building because there is, in some cases, though, having those actual links and being directly linked to authoritative site A to your site B are still impactful. Of course, that's going to be the one of the best opportunities to get users directly to your site. But in terms of what we're seeing in citations, it
Don't
isn't
know.
just backlinks. It just has your site needs to be mentioned where your audience is and where the LLMs are looking. So I would think of
Like
it
you
more as
correlated citations with with part of that authenticity piece, like not just backlinks, but like full on like citations. Um,
yeah.
it's like the new AI authenticity is part of it.
And
Not the only part, but
I think that's why a lot of these, not just LLMs, but also Google is using Reddit much more often because people got tired of seeing the same listicle sites and the same paid
that's why
for
my kids use it.
mentions. Yeah. And it's just like, I can't trust what this brand is saying because maybe they have been paid to be in this position. Versus if you type in product and Reddit, you're going to find what real users are looking for and what real users are recommending. So I think that is probably why the brand mentions are being useful and why Google is using it, LLMs are using it. Of course, it's kind of decreased a little bit with Reddit over the past month, but who's to
What
say
has
that's
over
a
the past month?
Reddit being mentioned in citations as often
Oh,
as it was,
really?
yeah, in the past. So it could just be I'm not, I don't know if it's a new trend yet or not, or if it's just a decrease in visibility, but I think it is something worth monitoring, especially on a case by case basis.
Could be just one data point. We have to. Hmm.
Yeah.
So broader Seer, or at least Alyssa, one more data point. Alyssa talked about how brand mentions may become the new links, and visibility depends on what's baked into the model training. Um, does your research confirm, and how do you measure it?
So this is still going back to a lot of the correlation analyses that we do.
Mhm.
Um, that it's between that correlation analysis as well as just again looking at a citation tracker and actually going into, we always recommend digging into your own data. There are so many, general case studies out there, and we are involved in a lot of those as well, we being Seer, but there's still the impact of actually saying, I work at a SaaS company and I'm interested in what is very specific into my what is driving visibility, brand mentions, performance in an AI first world. So I think in some cases, being mentioned on third party sites, those are very much important. In other cases, like we have a travel client, brand mentions on third party sites really aren't as beneficial, or at least directionally beneficial, as they are in the SaaS space. And we can kind of tie that into, if I'm a user, I don't really looking at the best sites to book travel. I can just look for flights from Charlotte to San Diego, look at what's visible on the search results, and say, I'm going to trust this site, I'm going to trust this airline, and kind of roll from there versus looking at an affiliate aggregator site for that information. So I think that's on the case by case basis. And whenever we look at I know I've mentioned the correlation analysis a couple of times, we actually calculate how many branded mentions a client and competitor data set have for a set of queries, compare that to their brand mentions on industry publications, and then see if there's a correlation between those mentions and LLM references. So that's kind of how we actually tactically look into it, but it is a case by case basis.
Makes sense. She also warned against chasing micro efficiencies. She said the big wins come from betting on high impact AI opportunities. So what counts as like high leverage move?
I think looking at high leverage could be something that is, let me think. I think it's based on prioritizing what the effort level would be. Like if there is a high effort of, in the past, we would maybe recommend or have a hypothesis that having on-page elements like calculators would be beneficial for LLM visibility because those elements aren't yet replicated in ChatGPT, so they would historically link out to pages with those information. That is potentially high impact. It's also very high effort. So before you try to kick off those really big swings, try out some of the smaller level of effort tests first, like if it's content recency, making sure your content is as up to date as possible. There are so many studies out there referencing that ChatGPT is searching or including 2025 in searches whenever it uses its search index. So some of those tests first and seeing what the impact are those. Change smaller elements of your site, like your header tags, like adding FAQs, some of those like smaller high leverage ones that you can actually say that we were not visible for this prompt, we changed this, and now we are visible for this prompt, and then scale it out versus just focusing on those massive, big swings at first.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about the impact of having something like embedded that like ChatGPT and various AIs can't
And
they can't they can't actually like fill in blanks for you and get out answers. So like calculators in various forms that um you actually have to go to a site to fill it out, like wizards and things like that. So, but there is a level of effort to build those things. So, are you familiar with the term painted door tests?
can you
You know,
explain
the
it a little bit more?
Roadrunner.
Yeah.
So painted door test is like saying you have a calculator or a wizard.
Mm,
Um, and but you don't. You paint the door and people knock and you go, oh, just kidding. It's in beta, or would you like to leave your email address? We'll let you know when it's available,
mm,
or something like that. It's a way to gauge interest. I'm curious if
okay.
letting it, it's something you do for users, but
Mhm.
I'm wondering if an AI would pick up, hey, we've got a calculator, and send people when you don't have a calculator yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we like worth looking into, to see just how much what you say could drive
To
how
see if
what you
it's
could say
worth
could reference.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also curious if it has to be embedded on your site, or if it's okay if it's in an iframe being pulled in, because like a lot of sites, like if you're in Squarespace and things like that, but you have to build it and a different technology, then you have to
Yeah.
put your iframes and they may not see it.
Well, yeah, I think so. I will say, like on the calculator specifically, that's how it exists right now. There's definitely, by the time finished
Yeah.
building this great calculator, it's like, just kidding. We have all of these capabilities. Like I could definitely imagine Claude having that.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and but then going to the iframe, I do think that's something that LLMs aren't able to reference at this point. We were
Yeah.
actually testing that just yesterday. Seer has a webinar today about the SEO's dead
And
topic,
then I'm attending
and
it. Yeah.
we had an iframe call out on our site, and we were trying to see if ChatGPT could reference it, and it couldn't. So I think, definitely making sure that those are actually at least HTML embedded on your page is going to be the beneficial.
Which is very hard if you're a drag and drop site like Wix or Squarespace or whatever. So good to know. All
Mhm.
right. Tag on. So back to the question. Let's go back to the question. You all are using Scrunch for tracking brand visibility across all the various different AIs. How reliable do you think the visibility metrics are, and what are they missing? Do you know yet?
I think they're extremely reliable for the data that we're able to track. This goes back to nobody has the search volume. So a lot of the questions that we get are what makes us select the prompts that we're tracking, because of course you would want to be tracking all of the high impact prompts that you are 100% sure that your users are searching for. But in this case, there really is no ability to do that at this point. And so instead of using search volume, it's really about just what I like to refer as casting as wide of a net as possible based on themes that you want to be visible for, and the personas that you want to be visible to as well. So I think, of course, search volume is going to be the thing that is overarchingly missing, but directionally, I do think that this is something that you can rely on to say, I am visible for this set of prompts, and this is the reason why, whether that's based on the citation data that you're able to pull through and say, I'm visible here because I'm mentioned on this set of sites that are commonly referenced for this information. So that where it starts, I think, as far as 101 of how to start looking for or measuring your AI visibility, yes, it is um, able to be used and accurately. As far as what it's missing, I think one thing that we tested and wanted to expand on is just the types of themes that LLMs reference in their outputs, not brands, but themes that are mentioned in the outputs, themes that aren't really that we don't lead in our questions or in our prompts, but just are naturally mentioned beside a brand and it's mentioned.
categorization and theming that it does naturally that you're not actually requesting, and
Right.
sometimes can be super helpful. Sometimes you're leading the witness and it
Exactly.
takes you
That's
down a path and you're like, where did that come from? Why is it there? And is it helpful, or is it actually a bunch of noise and
mhm,
forced categorization that is actually demonstrably unhelpful?
right. Because if you are looking at the themes that are being included in the outputs and you have really good coverage on themes 1 through 4, but for theme 5, you're really not visible for at all, but you're seeing that your competitors are, whether that's just because you're not mentioned on the site, you don't have any information on your own site with that
Or
information,
the
or
theme is
just,
junk.
or yeah, great point. So
Yeah.
I think understanding those sides of the outputs, not just the brands that are mentioned, is something that is worth looking into in the future too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that last one happens a lot when
With the
you're not the one that made up the themes in the first place. You got to like look under what's creating those themes in the first place.
Do you
Uh,
have any experience with the junk? That
oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of it, because not specifically with this platform, but with
yeah,
other platforms where the AI is creating the categorization. One of the
right.
things that I often do when I'm working with companies, and like maybe we have a mural or a Miro board, and then we do the AI to go in, and they've done all of their hypotheses or whatever, and then we have Miro or mural to do AI categorization.
Mm,
And if they don't pause and check the categorization, a lot of times they're like, okay, yeah, now let's go. And I'm like, wait, let's look
yeah.
at it. And they're like,
Hmm.
oh, like these last two, like none of the, let's recategorize this whole group. Like this fifth and sixth categories is just a rewording of these first three. We only need three categories. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
see, and if you hadn't looked at that, you would have had two completely unnecessary categories. And especially if you're talking something like personas, you never want more personas than you need.
I
So,
think that kind of ties into another level of AI adoption that we're probably at, where year and a half ago we were still mass talking about the hallucinations that LLMs would produce. And then it's kind of waned a little bit, at least in my purview. Now it seems that there are
it's
two
like
primary.
they're fine tuning a little too much, and it's like, dude, that's just the same thing. We don't need that.
I,
Um,
I think
and
there's like
and when
some
you're
odd.
talking modeling, it's very important that you don't, the added sensitivity of data
Mm,
is such that you don't get benefit from slicing your data that much.
yeah.
Uh, and there's art and science.
Mm,
And it takes somebody with enough experience to go, and the
yeah.
model doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So, um, Jono, talking to Jono, he suggested that websites were becoming hubs of records, not destinations, but data sources. Number one, do you agree? And then does it align with your findings from the log files and AI scraping behavior that you're seeing?
I hadn't thought about it that way, but I do think it's a good point and a good thought to have, because we were talking about the amount of research that you can do within LLMs. A lot of those pages that could be sourced for that information, it's not pages that you're relying on users to land on, but you're relying on AI to find and then reference. So I think that's a really good thought. And then, yeah, going into log files, we we have looked in the past at pages that had an increased number of log file hits from ChatGPT, and there are different, or from OpenAI, and there are different types of bots that are being used. primary one that is being used for users is the GPT user bot that is triggers anytime a web search is enabled from a user and it crawls a site. We were looking at that, and so we know that it's being used for citations for sources in conversations. We didn't see any directional connection between the pages that bot was hitting and increased amount of traffic to those pages. So I think based on that, then their thought was really good.
Okay. He's also argued that we've shifted from deterministic search to probabilistic discovery through AI, meaning not everyone sees the same thing anymore. And like when I mentioned this to Alyssa, she's like, well, they didn't really before. Like your search results are totally different from my search results. Right. But it's even more so now. So from a measurement perspective, how can marketers adapt when the results are so hyper differentiated in this probabilistic environment by user or by even by model version that they're using if they're in this like AI search world?
I think tracking and measurement are your friends because using a platform is great if you have the ability to look at scaled tracking, but this can also just start out with just tracking your 10 most priority prompts in a spreadsheet, looking at that every day if you need to see what is consistently referenced for your brand. Again, this is going back to
Unpack that for a
themes.
second. What do you mean by your 10 most priority prompts in a world where prompts can be paragraphs?
Yeah, so for Seer, for example, some of the prompts that we care about would be what are the best SEO agencies? What are the best paid search agencies? And then so like we have they could be a little bit more descriptive than that, but then some other themes of what are Seer's, or just tell me about Seer Interactive. What are
Okay.
Seer Interactive strengths? What are our weaknesses? So that we can see whenever we are mentioned
So it's
for,
what you care about, not necessarily. So the first prompts might be what other people are, how they're searching for you or what they're asking about you. But some of the prompts are what you want to know about what AI is saying about you. Like what
yes.
are Seer's strengths
And and
and
I'll
what are Seer's weaknesses?
so we're researching this test right now with a brand that's called um, brand misconceptions overarchingly. And the reason that we're looking at this is because we've been tracking the prompt, tell me about Seer Interactive, tell me about the Seer's strengths, tell me about Seer's weaknesses. One of the consistently mentioned brand weaknesses of Seer is that we have high account manager turnover. Now, I don't know if it's fair or unfair, but what I do know is that there are 5 sites that are commonly referenced for this brand weakness. All of these review sites only have one review from the same person on it from 5 years ago. So whether it's fair or not at that point in time, it should not still be referenced 5 years later as an accurate representation of Seer. We were looking at a test between ourselves and another agency for a potential client. And we were just running some of these test prompts through Gemini and was asking, compare Seer to this agency for this client based on all of this information that we had. And it ended up selecting the other agency. And one of the key aspects that it mentioned was Seer has high account manager turnover. That is a very real life example of
No.
what your users could be doing. And while we're just tracking, tell me about Seer's weakness to show how this is beneficial for a real life customer that whether they're in your ICP is beneficial. And
Yep.
then other, you know, factors as well of if you are looking for an enterprise software provider, having other enterprise clients on your site are going to be beneficial for it to tie in as well. We did for SaaS specifically, we were running some tests and we found that pages that were cited in LLMs had over 140% more likely, let me rephrase this. Pages that included trust signals were
Right.
140% more likely to be cited in LLMs than pages with zero. So that's just showing how much more beneficial it is to include some of these trust signals, whether it's product UVPs, statistics, customer reviews, testimonials, etc.
So testimonials, statistics, citations that point back. One of the other things that came up was this idea of like be, what was the words they used? Um, Controversial in your authenticity, but like not just be real. Like
Hmm.
I think it was Tone Vaseline who was like, Zero is dead. He didn't mean it. He was just saying, like what
Hmm.
we think of as CRO or CRO, the CRO role should be dead because everyone should experiment. And
Yeah.
the person who does like owns experimentation should actually become an enabler and an empowerer and teach others and educate. And like
Hmm.
product and marketing and everybody else should be the ones experimenting. But like that headline got a lot of clicks and it was totally clickbait. Uh,
Yeah.
and by being your authentic self and going out there and being real, it pulls people in. And that's more important with AI than
Yeah. I mean,
it used to be. Would you agree?
yeah, I mean, unique, being bold, being LLMs, people, they can see and understand the same information and just there's nothing noteworthy about that, whether it's clickbait or if it's something that a unique perspective that is like beneficial that somebody hasn't thought of, that's unique. So I think that is beneficial across platforms and just helpful for AI, but also just helpful to give people a different way to think about things as well.
Helpful to
We
open their minds and who wants to read the same thing 10 times?
Will has talked about it a lot, and he's has a post on the sea of sameness and how if you were searching for SEO RFP, there would be 10 links on Google, all with the same information. What is an SEO RFP? What you should include, etc., which is great. But what's the benefit of clicking page one versus page eight? It's all going to include more or less the same information. So providing a unique perspective, he actually updated that page that we were ranking number one for in Google to include some very unique questions to ask, things that he would be interested in, and provide some different information. And it ended up, in driving more visits, more sessions. I'm not sure about the conversion aspects, but it was more beneficial to actual people that landed on the site afterwards.
Right. Tons of sense. And that's called sea of sameness.
Sea of sameness.
Because one of the questions that I'm going to be asking you at the end is to give me some additional resources to read. So that's one. Okay, so for experimenters, people who live on the performance and testing side, how should they start measuring AI-driven influence? Like what could it like AI experiment? And I know we talked about it like a little bit last time, but what could an AI experiment look like for experimenters?
Yeah, I think it starts with a hypothesis. So, what do you think would drive visibility for AI and for your brand? Once you have that hypothesis, the second step needs to be actually backing that up with data. So you're not just throwing something at a wall and seeing if it sticks. In our one of our very first tests, it was with content recency. This started as an anecdote of any time that we were looking for researching on ChatGPT, we were seeing that the citations were consistently only within the past 6 months. So we said this has to mean something, right? So we looked at our clients' data and found that over 80% of their
Just a
AI
second.
sessions.
Just moved my office downstairs and it has the downside of doorbell. So you were saying over 50% of their AI sessions?
Over 80%
80,
of their
80%. Okay.
of their AI sessions were driven to pages that were updated within the last 2 years. And that was data backing our hypothesis. So now we ran with the test. There are 10 pages that haven't been updated in over a year that were, or over 2 years, that were still ranking well organically, driving organic sessions, but not visible really at all in AI. So we updated those pages in order to increase our sessions and ended up driving an increased amount of AI sessions, traffic, engagement to those pages after data backing the hypothesis. So I think having one of these, very specific hypothesis and understanding if it is valuable, that was for a SaaS software versus we also have an energy client where it really wasn't as high of a priority with the 80% being driven within the past 2 years because it's not as, like recency
Driven.
driven. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a case by case basis. So I think, start out with
So
some
it depends on the
hypothesis.
vertical
Yeah,
and the importance of the recency in each vertical would be different.
exactly.
That makes total sense. Um, okay, looking at the time, let's do some quick predictions and then I don't think I told you in the beginning, the last 5 minutes, we will have a lightning round. I have 5 questions. You have 60 seconds for each. I asked each interviewee, yes, the same questions. But before that, some quick predictions and advice. What's the biggest thing marketers still must understand about AI-driven visibility?
I don't know if this is something that marketers still need to understand, but I would just say there are a lot more avenues to measure it now than there were definitely this time last year. So if you haven't already, just begin tracking some of these prompts anecdotally, or look into a provider to look at some of that information.
I was going to
Uh,
ask when you say, because all three of you have said, like, start tracking the prompts. Do they need a special platform to do that?
you don't need a special platform. You can use your own
Like, could they
chat.
just do it with like Excel or
Yeah,
Google Sheets and just like put the prompt in and like maybe set up some sort of API to just auto check it on a daily basis or something
you can definitely do that.
if they're, you know, don't have the funds or whatever, if they're a startup or
I would take it a step back from that and just manually type it in, manually copy it, and put it in a sheet. I was doing that for a client this morning that doesn't have uh, a
this
tracker
is what
set up.
it says. Here's
Yes.
the, yeah, okay.
So it's start with level one of just doing manual. And if you have the technical expertise, run with an API
That's what I'm
and
saying,
set
just
set
to
up that
create a,
automatic tracking, right?
because I would think, and tell me if I'm wrong, do the answers that um ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, like they're all giving you, do they change by time of day of week, model used?
They change by model used. I don't know about the how the different days as will affect it. There definitely is some variability
Because
in
don't they
there.
change by whether they're using training data or
Yeah, 100%.
and
And
how can you
some
tell whether they're using training data or not?
you can see if there are any sources mentioned, then they're using their web search capability. If there aren't any sources mentioned, then the majority of the time it's just baked into their training data. ChatGPT's training data for GPT-5 was just updated in as of September 2024 versus the previous GPT 4.0 was last updated in November of 2023. So anytime that it's looking for information that it didn't have after September of last year, it's going to be using its web search capability.
Can you
Um,
force it?
yeah, you can definitely, there's either ask it for more recent information or just, I believe there's the capabilities box that you can select to use its search as well.
Which one is
Outside of
better for the environment?
it is for
Would,
searching.
is it better to have it search or is it better to have it use its training data?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I'm very curious about that. I have a friend who is hypersensitive about like
Hmm.
every time each word you use, this is how much water it uses. Please don't use the word please in your prompt. And
Hmm.
I was like, but I want it to be nicer.
Right. Yeah. We
Dumb.
have, yeah, there's definitely some of the team at Seer that are very much focused on the environmental impact. So I don't have as much, knowledge to share from my end there. Outside of that, I would also say to just set up a AI channel grouping in your analytics and see what all the traffic and engagement and conversions that you're already getting that you aren't even doing anything for specifically.
Do you have a hard stop? Do I need to jump into lightning round?
I have a couple minutes I can go past.
Okay. Let me ask you one more quick prediction and then we'll jump into lightning round. If you're advising a CMO, what would you tell them to stop measuring? And what would you tell them to start measuring instead?
So I'm not going to go to a CMO and tell them to stop measuring traffic to the website, especially from organic search, because there's a lot of, budget and funds and just manpower that go into those things. But I think so rather than stopping that, I think it's more about segmenting it in the future, understanding different KPIs for different tasks that you're doing, different content that you're pushing out, and different channels. So looking, you're not as a bold prediction, you're really not going to get as much traffic from what is and definition style content in 2026 as you got in 2023. Those are definitions that AI overviews can create themselves now. ChatGPT can create themselves. So you're not going to get the click through as much as you may have a couple of
But
years
your
ago when
direct may go up, right?
your direct could go up. But for mid funnel traffic, so users that are actually looking to perform an action, do more research, that should have a different KPI than your top of funnel content. Your bottom funnel content should have separate KPIs as well, whether that's, like of course, conversions, click-throughs, signups, whatever it should be, there should be different, you should segment the I guess, key performance indicators
Yeah.
for each of those more than you may have in the past of just looking at sessions and conversions as a blanket
So you should have like
KPI.
different levels of expectations for your conversion events for each level of the
Exactly.
subscription funnel.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to dive into the lightning round before we do.
It couldn't do in the past, whether that's open up multiple different tabs, clicking on a bunch of different links. There's so many less clicks that are needed now than 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago.
Tabs are killing. Yes, you're right. That is so true. Okay. If you were advising a brand tomorrow, what's the single most important thing they should do differently to stay visible in the age of AI?
My first step is always to dig into your own data. There are so many general studies out there, but not all of us or any of us are just general marketers. We need to be very specific to the vertical that we're in. So first, I would say, let's look into what traffic and what type of performance they're already getting from AI. Let's benchmark it, and then let's see what we can do to influence it or shift that in the future.
So when you say benchmark, and so you're saying they need to look in their own data, but they need to benchmark against competitors' data as well?
Benchmark against yourself for
Okay,
the,
against yourself. Okay.
yeah,
What's one thing experimenters should stop doing right now because it no longer works?
I would say for an experimenter, the LLMS dot text files, that was very, um, it was a hot topic in the GEO, AEO conversations at the beginning of the year, people kind of debating whether it works or whether it doesn't. We've tested it a couple of different times. They're indexed in Google, but as far as driving any AI references, we're not seeing those impact at all.
You're going to have to email me afterwards and tell me what these text files are.
I will.
The first time I've heard that. What's the most misunderstood thing about AI and search?
I mean, it's a hot topic, but I'm going to stand firm and say that they are separate things. And it's just because they're very different, not very different, but there are different outputs that we're looking to get and different can, KPIs that we're looking to get from each of these. The footer test, as that I was referencing earlier, we weren't looking to rank organically for enterprise clients. We were just wanting to be referenced for our enterprise clients in ChatGPT. That was the goal of that. And that was not an SEO tactic. It was a generative engine optimization tactic.
Yep, that makes sense. All right. My favorite question. If you could recommend one resource, it can be a blog, a book, a podcast, or a person every digital professional should know about right now, what would it be or who?
You said one.
Yep. But don't worry, you can email me after a whole list.
Yeah. I would honestly say Kevin Endig. I've been reading a lot of his stuff on his growth memo lately. So checking out that. He's very active on LinkedIn. He's always sharing all things AI
Hold on,
search.
hold on. I think you just gave me the same person that Alyssa did. That is hilarious and says so much about you two that I have to check because that would be amazing.
Let me think of it back up.
Kevin, yes.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
That is hilarious. Y'all are like in lockstep. That is hilarious. All right. All right. Well, that speaks very highly that you both recommended the same person. So okay. Don't forget, send me pictures, send me a couple of different options, make it a fun pictures. And then also email me follow up on the AI text. What was
Yes, LMS. Yes.
LMS? Oh, okay. Yeah, a little bit more idea, but still send me any like links I can read about. And then if you have more recommendations on articles I should follow up on, people I should follow up on, other people I should interview, books, it can be, I mean, there's not a lot of books right now, although I am reading Empire of AI. But anything that any other people I should interview or content that I should read for